Welcome. In this lecture, we are going to make arterial and venous blood gas interpretation practical. The goal is not to memorize a textbook chapter. The goal is to have a simple, repeatable algorithm that you can apply at the bedside under pressure. We will focus on acid-base interpretation, compensation, anion gap logic, and the oxygenation checks that are most useful for clinicians. And as always, this is for medical education only. Use patient-specific judgment, local protocols, and supervising clinical guidance. Let us start with a common trap. A patient with pneumonia arrives on oxygen, and the blood gas shows a pH of 7.40, a carbon dioxide of 20, and a bicarbonate of 12. The pH looks normal, so it is tempting to move on. But this patient is not normal. A low bicarbonate suggests metabolic acidosis, and the carbon dioxide is even lower than expected, which means there is also respiratory alkalosis. So the real diagnosis is a mixed metabolic acidosis plus respiratory alkalosis. That is the mindset for this lecture. Do not stop at the pH. Use the whole gas, use the chemistry panel, and always return to the patient. By the end of this session, you should be able to do 5 things. First, classify the pH as acidemia, alkalemia, or a suspicious normal pH. Second, identify whether the main disorder is respiratory or metabolic. Third, detect mixed disorders by checking whether compensation is appropriate. Fourth, assess oxygenation using arterial oxygen, the alveolar arterial gradient, oxygen response, and the P/F ratio. Finally, you should be able to work through common bedside cases in less than 1 minute each. Before interpreting a blood gas, know what the analyzer actually measures. The analyzer directly measures pH, carbon dioxide tension, and oxygen tension. Bicarbonate on the gas is calculated from pH and carbon dioxide using the Henderson-Hasselbalch relationship. Base excess is also derived. This matters because the gas bicarbonate is internally linked to that same pH and carbon dioxide. So when you are interpreting the gas or applying compensation formulas, use the bicarbonate reported on that gas. Think of the gas as 3 domains: acid-base status, ventilation, and oxygenation. A common resident-level mistake is mixing up gas bicarbonate and chemistry panel total carbon dioxide. For the gas itself, use the calculated gas bicarbonate because it matches the pH and carbon dioxide on that report. For the anion gap, use the chemistry panel total carbon dioxide because it belongs with sodium and chloride from the same panel. For trending the metabolic component over time, the chemistry panel total carbon dioxide is very useful because it is directly measured. In stable patients, chemistry total carbon dioxide often runs about 1 to 3 milliequivalents per liter higher than the gas bicarbonate. But in shock or cardiac arrest, that relationship becomes unreliable. These are the anchor values we will use throughout the lecture. Normal pH is 7.35 to 7.45. Normal arterial carbon dioxide is 35 to 45 millimeters of mercury. Normal bicarbonate is 21 to 27 milliequivalents per liter. Base excess is about -2 to +2. Arterial oxygen is generally above 80 millimeters of mercury, and oxygen saturation is generally above 95%. These numbers are anchors, not substitutes for clinical judgment. A normal pH can still hide a dangerous mixed disorder. When should you use a venous blood gas, and when do you need an arterial blood gas? For a stable patient where you mainly need pH, bicarbonate, and lactate trends, a venous gas is often enough. But if you need arterial oxygen tension, an alveolar arterial gradient, or precise oxygenation assessment, you need an arterial blood gas. You should also favor arterial sampling when the patient is in shock, when the pH is extreme, when the result does not fit the patient, or when you need co-oximetry for carbon monoxide or methemoglobin concerns. The shortcut is simple: venous gas for stable acid-base screening, arterial gas for oxygenation, instability, or doubt. If you use a venous blood gas, label the source. Central venous and peripheral venous values are similar, but not identical. As a practical teaching shortcut, arterial pH is usually about 0.03 to 0.05 higher than venous pH. For central venous carbon dioxide, subtract about 4 to 5 millimeters of mercury to estimate the arterial value. For peripheral venous carbon dioxide, Subtract about 3 to 8 millimeters of mercury. But remember the hard stop. Venous oxygen tension cannot reliably estimate arterial oxygen tension. Also, in shock, venous carbon dioxide may be very high while arterial carbon dioxide looks deceptively normal. That is the pseudo-respiratory alkalosis trap. Before creating a complex diagnosis, ask whether the sample is believable. A venous sample mislabeled as arterial can make the oxygen tension look unexpectedly low. An air bubble can distort oxygen and carbon dioxide. A delayed analysis can allow ongoing cell metabolism to change values. If the oxygen device or fraction of inspired oxygen is not documented, oxygenation interpretation becomes weak. And without a chemistry panel, you may miss the anion gap or the comparison between gas bicarbonate and total carbon dioxide. If the result does not fit the patient, verify the sample first. Here is the whole method. Step 1. Check whether the gas is internally valid. Step 2. Name the pH direction. Step 3. Identify the primary disorder. Step 4. Check compensation and decide whether this is simple, chronic, or mixed. Step 5. If there is metabolic acidosis, calculate the anion gap and delta ratio. Step 6. If the patient is hypoxemic, assess oxygenation with the alveolar arterial gradient, oxygen response, and P/F ratio. Use this sequence every time, and blood gas interpretation becomes much less intimidating. The quick validity check is useful when the numbers look strange. First, estimate hydrogen ion concentration from the pH. A practical shortcut is hydrogen ion is about 80 minus the last 2 digits of the pH. So a pH of 7.25 gives a hydrogen ion concentration around 55. Then compare that with the Henderson shortcut. Hydrogen ion equals 24 times carbon dioxide divided by bicarbonate. In the example, 24 times 25 divided by 11 is about 55. That means the pH, carbon dioxide, and bicarbonate are internally consistent. Now name the pH. pH below 7.35 is acidemia. pH above 7.45 is alkalemia. A pH between 7.35 and 7.45 is normal, compensated, or suspicious for a mixed disorder. The official thresholds are 7.35 and 7.45. The 7.38 and 7.42 Pearl is only a warning system to make you look harder when other values are abnormal. Then use Rome. Respiratory disorders move pH and carbon dioxide in opposite directions. Metabolic disorders move pH and bicarbonate in the same direction. Compensation is predictable. Usually, compensation moves the pH toward normal but does not overshoot. If there is no expected response, the disorder may be very acute or uncompensated. If the response is too high or too low, think mixed disorder. But there is an important nuance. Chronic respiratory alkalosis and sometimes mild chronic respiratory acidosis can bring pH into the normal range. So a normal pH is not automatically mixed, but it should make you ask about duration, clinical context, and whether the compensation actually fits. For metabolic acidosis, the main template is expected arterial carbon dioxide equals 40 minus 1.2 times 24 minus the bicarbonate. The classic winter formula is 1.5 times bicarbonate plus 8, plus or minus 2. You can also use bicarbonate plus 15, or say the expected carbon dioxide is close to the last 2 digits of the pH. These estimates give nearly identical results, so use whichever you remember. For metabolic alkalosis, carbon dioxide rises by about 0.7 per bicarbonate increase, with a traditionally cited ceiling around 55. For respiratory disorders, acute bicarbonate changes are small. Chronic kidney compensation is larger. Every metabolic acidosis gets an anion gap. Use the chemistry panel for this calculation. Sodium minus the sum of chloride and total carbon dioxide. The usual normal range is about 8 to 12, but this is lab dependent. Some frameworks use 12 plus or minus 4 as a practical shortcut. The key nuance is albumin. Albumin is a major unmeasured anion, so low albumin lowers the measured gap and can hide a high gap acidosis. Correct by adding 2.5 for every 1 gram per deciliter that albumin is below 4. Once you have metabolic acidosis, sort it into high gap or normal gap. In high anion gap metabolic acidosis, a new acid has been added to the blood. Goldmark helps. Glycols, oxoproline, L-lactate, D-lactate, methanol, aspirin, renal failure, and ketoacidosis. Mud piles is the older classic mnemonic. In normal gap acidosis, bicarbonate is lost or chloride replaces it. Think diarrhea, renal tubular acidosis, early renal insufficiency, chloride-rich fluids, acetazolamide, or ureteroenterostomy. If the high gap is unexplained, think osmolar gap, D-lactate, and 5-oxoproline. Delta-delta is used after you identify a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. The delta ratio is the anion gap minus 12, divided by 24 minus bicarbonate. If the ratio is less than 1, there is likely an additional normal gap metabolic acidosis. If it is between 1 and 2, the pattern fits typical high gap acidosis. If it is greater than 2, there is likely an additional metabolic alkalosis. Remember that the expected ratio differs by acid. Diabetic ketoacidosis is often about 1 to 1, while lactic acidosis is often around 1.6 to 1.7 to 1. Do not finish a blood gas interpretation without checking oxygenation when the patient is hypoxemic. Carbon dioxide tells you about ventilation. Arterial oxygen tension and the alveolar arterial gradient tell you about oxygenation and gas transfer. Oxygen saturation tells you hemoglobin saturation, and the P/F ratio helps grade oxygenation failure. This distinction matters because a patient can have a perfectly interpreted acid-base disorder and still be in severe respiratory failure. The alveolar arterial gradient is a lung filter test. On room air, estimate alveolar oxygen as 150 minus carbon dioxide divided by 0.8. Then subtract arterial oxygen to get the gradient. A rough normal is age divided by 4 plus 4, or less than about 10 to 15 in young adults. If the gradient is normal, think hypoventilation or low inspired oxygen. If it is elevated, think impaired gas transfer, lung disease, pulmonary vascular disease, shunt, or diffusion limitation. The oxygen response is the practical discriminator. Low inspired oxygen and hypoventilation usually have a normal alveolar arterial gradient and improve with oxygen. Ventilation-perfusion mismatch has an elevated gradient and usually improves with oxygen. Diffusion limitation also often improves. Shunt is the key exception. It has an elevated gradient and responds poorly to 100% oxygen. That is why distinguishing V/Q mismatch from shunt matters at the bedside. The P/F ratio is arterial oxygen divided by fraction of inspired oxygen. A ratio above 300 is not in the ARDS oxygenation range. 200 to 300 is mild. 100 to 200 is moderate. Less than 100 is severe. But do not use the ratio in isolation. The Berlin ARDS oxygenation tiers require positive end expiratory pressure of at least 5 centimeters of water, and the diagnosis also depends on timing, imaging, ventilatory settings, and exclusion of cardiogenic edema. The classic algorithm is the spine of this lecture. Stewart, or strong ion thinking, is a level-up framework for explaining some metabolic patterns. Strong ion difference reminds us that sodium and chloride balance affect pH. Weak acids such as albumin and phosphate also matter. Carbon dioxide still matters as the respiratory component. The practical bedside pearl is that a falling sodium-chloride difference can help explain hyperchloremic metabolic acidosis, especially after chloride-rich fluids. But for most bedside interpretation, keep the classic algorithm as your main workflow. Pattern recognition helps you move quickly. Low pH with high carbon dioxide is respiratory acidosis. Think hypoventilation. Low pH with low bicarbonate is metabolic acidosis. Calculate the gap. High pH with low carbon dioxide is respiratory alkalosis. Think hyperventilation from pain, sepsis, pulmonary embolism, or other causes. High pH with high bicarbonate is metabolic alkalosis. Think vomiting, diuretics, or chloride depletion. Normal pH with abnormal carbon dioxide and bicarbonate is not reassuring. It means either chronic compensation or a mixed disorder, so do the math. Let us apply the algorithm. The pH is 7.28, so there is acidemia. Bicarbonate is 11, so the primary process is metabolic acidosis. The anion gap is sodium minus the sum of chloride and bicarbonate, 140 minus 116, which equals 24. That is a high anion gap metabolic acidosis. Winter's expected carbon dioxide is about 25 plus or minus 2, and the actual carbon dioxide is 24, so compensation is appropriate. The bedside label is high anion gap metabolic acidosis with appropriate respiratory compensation. In the second case, the pH is 7.52, so there is alkalemia. Bicarbonate is 38, so the primary disorder is metabolic alkalosis. Carbon dioxide is 48, which is elevated in the expected direction, meaning respiratory compensation is present. The bedside label is metabolic alkalosis with respiratory compensation. The next clinical step is not more math. It is asking why vomiting, gastric suction, diuretics, and chloride depletion are common patterns, and urine chloride can help when appropriate. This is the case from the opening. The pH is 7.40, but do not stop. Carbon dioxide is 20, and bicarbonate is 12. The low bicarbonate suggests metabolic acidosis. For a bicarbonate of 12, expected carbon dioxide is roughly 26 plus or minus 2 by Winter's formula, but the actual carbon dioxide is 20. That is lower than expected, so there is an added respiratory alkalosis. The bedside label is mixed metabolic acidosis plus respiratory alkalosis. Classic contexts include sepsis and salicylate toxicity, depending on the story. Here is the final 1-minute script. First, is the sample believable? Second, what is the pH? Acidemia, alkalemia, or suspicious normal? Third, which value explains it? Carbon dioxide or bicarbonate? Fourth, is compensation expected, chronic, or mixed? Fifth, if there is metabolic acidosis, what are the anion gap and delta ratio? Sixth, if the patient is hyposemic, what are the alveolar arterial gradient, oxygen response, and P/F ratio? Same sequence, every gas, every time. Most blood gas mistakes are not math mistakes. They are context mistakes. Do not call a normal pH normal until you check carbon dioxide, bicarbonate, and the anion gap. Do not forget chronic respiratory exceptions. Do not skip albumin correction when the albumin is low. Do not use a venous gas to answer an arterial oxygenation question. And during treatment of diabetic ketoacidosis, do not follow bicarbonate alone, because chloride-rich fluids can create a normal gap acidosis even while the anion gap improves. The take-home message is simple. Validate pH, primary disorder, compensation, anion gap, delta-delta, and oxygenation. If you use that sequence every time, the interpretation becomes much more reliable. The most dangerous errors are stopping at a normal pH, trusting a venous gas for oxygenation, forgetting albumin correction, and ignoring the patient in front of you. The blood gas is data. The diagnosis comes from combining the data with the clinical story. This lecture gives you a practical bedside framework, not the full acid-base textbook. Use it to organize your thinking, but keep reading the full recommendations and compare this approach with your local teaching and protocols. Most importantly, apply your own clinical analysis to every patient. When the numbers and the patient disagree, reassess the patient first, verify the sample second, and then repeat the algorithm from the beginning.